Mom sent a message. We changed all the locks on the front door and also the gate code. We no longer trust you. I replied, understood, very smart, but I think you overlooked one thing. Then I canceled the $600 mortgage I'd still been paying, even after they said my sister deserved the house. 2 days later, their lawyer emailed, we have a problem, call immediately. I never did, because it was already, my name is Claire Taylor. I'm 33 years old and I work as a financial analyst in Seattle. I'm not the kind of person who makes a scene and I don't normally talk about my personal life with strangers. But something happened recently that changed everything. It started with a text from my mother. I was getting ready for work sipping coffee in the kitchen when my phone buzzed. I glanced down and saw her name thinking it might be about dinner plans or a question about her taxes, something routine. Instead it read, we've changed the locks. Lily said she saw you driving by and felt threatened. We no longer feel safe having you around. I froze. Just like that, with 3 sentences, my own family decided I didn't belong anymore. I stared at the message in silence. There was no warning, no conversation, just a decision made without me, about me delivered cold and final. My hands started to shake and my stomach turned. It felt like someone had hit me from behind. I wanted to believe it was a mistake or a misunderstanding, but deep down, I knew better. I took a breath and typed back, that's smart. But you missed one thing. Then I hit send. I didn't explain what they'd missed. I didn't follow up with more questions. I just let the silence speak. Because what they missed was simple. They thought they could erase me and still keep everything I gave. But they forgot who was holding it all together. And they never once stopped to ask what would happen if I let go. I know this sounds dramatic, maybe even harsh, but if you've ever been the one who always shows up, who always gives, who sacrifices and swallows hurt just to keep the peace, you'll understand. You'll understand what it means to finally reach that edge, to look over and realize there's nothing left for you on the other side. That text didn't come out of nowhere. It was years in the making, years of being the backup plan, the invisible safety net, the responsible one who was always expected to clean up the mess. So before I tell you what happened after I stopped answering their calls, before I explain how it all unraveled, let me take you back. Back to the beginning. Back to the dinners where my voice was never the loudest. Back to the birthdays that felt like obligations. Back to the moments where being good wasn't enough to be seen. Because this story isn't just about a lock or a house. It's about what happens when you give everything to people who don't see your worth until you stop giving. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, like you had to earn love that was freely given to someone else, then this story might sound familiar. And if you've ever wondered what it would take to finally choose yourself, even if it means letting go of everything you thought you needed, then maybe you'll want to stick around. This is how I walked away from the life I built for everyone else. This is how I started over. This is how it all fell apart. I was 5 years old the first time I realized I wasn't the favorite. It was Lily's 3rd birthday, and my parents had gone all out. Balloons, a princess cake with edible glitter, a backyard full of neighborhood kids, and a clown who made balloon animals. 2 months later, on my birthday, we had dinner at Olive Garden. My parents gave me a new backpack and said it was practical for school. I remember sitting there watching Lily smear Alfredo sauce on her face while everyone laughed and wondering what made her worth more sparkle. It didn't stop there. Lily was the kid who needed more attention, more praise, more understanding. If she cried, everything stopped. If I cried, I was told to calm down and be the big sister. If she failed a math quiz, my mom would sit with her for hours helping her catch up. When I brought home straight A's, my dad would nod and say, "Good job, kiddo," then turn back to his laptop. At school, I worked hard because I thought maybe if I just got one more award or did one more impressive thing, they'd finally look at me the way they looked at her. but it never really changed. I was dependable. She was adored. I was the steady one, the one who didn't cause problems. Lily, on the other hand, was always the center of gravity pulling everything toward her. She broke her arm falling off the trampoline one summer, and my mom slept in her room for 2 weeks straight. When I had pneumonia that same year, she checked on me before bed and then went to watch a movie with Lily. I was used to it by then. I even told myself I preferred it that way. They called me strong, independent, the one who doesn't need much. It sounded like a compliment, but it felt like a dismissal. Like being easy to ignore was something I should be proud of. By middle school, I had stopped expecting anyone to come to my performances or ask about my day. I kept my feelings folded away neat and hidden. I learned to be efficient, responsible, and the one who handled things so no one else had to. Meanwhile, Lily got a car for her 16th birthday. I got the hand-me-down Honda my uncle didn't want anymore. They said it was fair because I was more practical. Even in college, nothing changed. When I got into a top university on scholarship, my parents said they were proud, but spent the next 2 weeks flying back and forth to visit Lily at her small liberal arts school because she was having a rough time adjusting. When I needed help with moving, I hired a friend with a truck. It wasn't like they were cruel. They never said I wasn't enough. They just didn't see me the way they saw her. I was the one they leaned on, not the one they worried about. That might sound like a blessing, but when your whole value is wrapped up in what you can do for others, you start to wonder what's left when you need something back. I remember one Thanksgiving, Lily showed up late in tears over a breakup. She barely touched her plate and spent the evening wrapped in a blanket while my mom made her tea and rubbed her back. I had just gotten a promotion at work that week. I mentioned it once. No one asked a follow-up question. Eventually, I stopped bringing things up. I smiled, nodded, brought dessert, and helped clean up after every gathering. I learned to carry my own weight, and everyone else's too. And when I got tired or overwhelmed, I told myself I was just being selfish. That I was lucky to be strong, lucky to be the one they could count on. But sometimes, when I lay awake at night, I wondered what it would feel like to be someone they worried about. The truth is, when you grow up being the easy child, you learn to shrink your needs so small, no one even notices they're not being met. You learn to be grateful for scraps of attention and call it love. So by the time I was an adult, the pattern was already set. I didn't ask for help. I didn't complain. I took care of things. And when my parents got into trouble, of course, I stepped in. That's what I'd always done. But deep down, I think I hoped that this time would be different. That maybe, just maybe, if I gave enough, I'd finally be seen. I was wrong. It started over a Sunday dinner. My parents looked tired, older somehow, and there was a heaviness in the air before a single word was said. My dad cleared his throat and told me they were behind on the mortgage again this time, by 3 months, and the bank had already sent a warning letter. They didn't outright ask me for help. They never really had to. My mom said, "We hate to put this on you, Claire, but we don't know what else to do." Lily sat quietly picking at her salad, not offering anything. I didn't hesitate. I said I could cover the payments at least for a while until they figured something out. It felt like the right thing to do, the responsible thing. After all, this was the house I grew up in. I couldn't imagine it belonging to someone else. The monthly mortgage was $5,400, a number that made my chest tighten the moment I logged into my banking app. But I told myself I could make it work. I canceled my lease search. I stopped looking at condos. I cut back on everything. No more takeout, no new clothes, no weekend trips. I picked up freelance financial reviews in the evenings and spent most weekends doing contract work for small businesses. It wasn't easy, but I managed. At first, I thought they were relieved. They seemed lighter, more relaxed. But they never said thank you. There was no conversation about how long I'd do this or how they planned to eventually take it back. It just became the new normal. They acted like it was expected. It made perfect sense for me to sacrifice my financial future to keep the roof over all of our heads, even though I didn't live there. I had a small apartment in the city with outdated plumbing and paper-thin walls. They had a 4-bedroom house with a yard. I told myself it was temporary, that maybe once they were stable again, I'd get to save for my own place. I kept spreadsheets, tracked every dollar, and tried to stay focused on the long term. But every month, when I hit submit on that online transfer, I felt a little part of me chip away. I started to notice that no one ever asked how I was doing. My parents talked about grocery bills and utilities. Lily talked about her art projects and how expensive yoga classes had gotten. I smiled and nodded, calculating interest rates in my head. One night, over coffee with my friend Jasmine, I broke down. I've paid over $60,000 in the last year, I told her. And not once has anyone asked if I'm okay. She looked at me for a long time and said, "Claire, that's not love. That's usage." It hurt to hear. But deep down, I already knew. I kept hoping that maybe they just didn't realize how hard it was. That if I hung in there a little longer, they'd notice. They'd say thank you. Maybe even offer to help. But the truth was, they had come to see my support as permanent, quiet, unquestioned. They didn't see it as generosity. They saw it as my role. I was the one who fixed things. That was the cost of being strong. And the longer I paid, the more invisible I felt. Like I had become a transaction instead of a daughter. Like all I was to them now was a bank account with a name. I didn't want to admit that I was running out of energy. That even as I smiled at family dinners and made polite conversation, I was drowning. But it was there, building slowly under the surface. And soon, it would boil over. It was a Sunday evening like any other. I brought a bottle of wine and a box of pastries from that bakery my mom pretended to love. We had dinner, made small talk, and as always, Lily's life dominated the conversation, while mine floated quietly in the background. After the dishes were cleared, we moved to the living room. My dad cleared his throat the way he always did when something was coming. "We have some news," he said, glancing at Lily with a smile that made my stomach twist. My mom reached over and took Lily's hand. "Lily and Jake are going to be moving in," she said gently, like it was no big deal. I blinked, trying to register what I had just heard. I asked if their lease was ending, if this was temporary. My mom nodded, said something vague about how the house felt too big for just the two of them. My dad chimed in that it just made sense. I felt my chest tighten. "So they'll be helping with the mortgage, right?" I asked. The room went quiet. No one answered. My mother stared at her coffee like it held the secret to escaping the moment. My dad shifted uncomfortably. Jake looked at the floor. Lily twirled a strand of hair unfazed. Then my mom finally spoke. Her voice was soft, but her words hit like ice water. "Claire, you don't even live here. Lily's always loved this house." I sat there stunned. 2 years of mortgage payments over $100,000, and somehow I didn't count. Somehow my love for that house didn't matter. Lily rolled her eyes. "It's not that serious, Claire. Don't be dramatic." I stood up slowly, my legs shaking, but my voice steady. "I think I'm done for tonight," I said. No one stopped me. No one called after me. As I walked to my car, my heart pounded. Something had shifted. Not just in them, but in me. For the first time, I wasn't sure I wanted to keep holding everything together. 3 days after that dinner, I was brushing my teeth before work when my phone buzzed. It was a text from my mother. I wiped my hands, unlocked the screen, and read the message twice before I understood what it meant. "We've changed the locks and the gate code. Lily saw you driving by last night and felt threatened. Please respect our decision. At first, I just stood there, toothbrush in hand, staring at the words like they were in another language. I hadn't been anywhere near that house. I was at home watching a documentary with Owen. But they didn't ask where I'd been. They didn't check in. They just assumed the worst and cut me out. It wasn't just the lie that stung. It was the casual cruelty of it. The finality. After everything I had given, after every month, I covered their mortgage, they changed the locks and told me to stay away. My first instinct was to call my mom. Then I thought about calling Lily and letting her have it. Instead, I texted Jasmine. They locked me out. Literally. She called me within seconds. I told her what happened, trying to keep my voice steady. I expected her to be shocked. She wasn't. "Claire, this isn't new," she said gently. "It's just the first time they made it official." I called Owen next. He listened quietly, then asked, "Do you still want to keep paying for a house you're not allowed to enter?" The question knocked the air out of me. I sat on the edge of the bed, phone still in hand. For 2 years, I'd told myself this was temporary, that I was helping because that's what families did. I thought if I gave enough, I'd earn something back. Maybe respect, maybe love. But I had earned nothing, not even a conversation, not even the courtesy of a phone call before they changed the locks. And in that moment, something inside me snapped into place. I walked to my desk, opened my laptop, and logged into my online banking. The mortgage payment was scheduled to auto-draft in 4 days. My cursor hovered over the cancel recurring transfer button. I hesitated. I thought about the vacations I never took, the apartment I never bought, the stress, the resentment, the nights I cried in silence after Sunday dinners that felt like emotional boot camp. Then I clicked cancel. A message popped up asking me to confirm. I clicked yes. Then I opened a blank email to the mortgage company. I explained that I was no longer making payments on behalf of the owners and that any future correspondence should be sent directly to them. It felt terrifying, and it felt like breathing for the first time in months. I shut my laptop and lay back on the bed. I stared at the ceiling and tried to figure out what came next. I didn't have an answer. But for the first time, I didn't feel like I owed one. I had been holding everything together out of obligation and fear. Fear of disappointing them. Fear of being seen as selfish. But they had made their choice. They chose Lily. They chose distance. Now I was choosing myself. Not out of anger, but out of necessity. I had nothing left to give to people who only saw me as a resource. I didn't respond to my mother's message. I didn't ask for an explanation. I let the silence speak for me. That night, I went to Owen's apartment. He poured me tea and let me sit in silence until I was ready to speak. When I finally did, all I could say was, "I think I just set myself free." He smiled and took my hand. "Good," he said. "It's about time." I didn't sleep much that night, but when I did, I dreamed of doors that opened only from the inside. The silence lasted 3 days. Then my phone lit up like a slot machine. The first message was from my mother, and it started with "sweetheart," which I knew meant she wanted something. She said they had only changed the locks because of recent break-ins in the neighborhood, and that I was always welcome. She added a line about clearing up a misunderstanding with the bank, as if I hadn't just pulled the rug out from under their entire plan. I didn't reply. The next message was from my father. It was one line, "Unacceptable behavior, Claire. You have a responsibility to this family." His tone was always the same when he was disappointed, measured sharp, and just detached enough to make me doubt myself. Then came Lily. "Seriously," she wrote. "This is what jealousy looks like. You couldn't stand that they finally gave me something." She followed it with a string of accusations calling me bitter, selfish, and impossible to please. I turned off my phone and tossed it across the couch. But even when it was silent, the words echoed in my head. They knew exactly where to aim. Over the next few days, the messages kept coming. Some from extended family who had clearly been told a very different version of events. My aunt said she was disappointed in my lack of compassion. A cousin asked if I was going through something and needed prayer. I stopped checking my phone in the mornings. I didn't want their voices to be the first thing I heard when I woke up. I started losing sleep. I'd wake up at 2 or 3 a.m., heart racing, unable to calm down. At work, I stared at spreadsheets and couldn't remember what I was looking for. I skipped lunch. I forgot to answer emails. I told myself I just needed a few days to adjust, but the heaviness didn't lift. One evening, Jasmine came over unannounced with takeout and a firm look in her eyes. "You're not okay?" she said as soon as I opened the door. I broke down. I told her everything, every message, every word I couldn't unhear. She listened, then said something I'll never forget. "They're not grieving you, Claire. They're grieving their lost control." That sentence hit something raw in me. She was right. They weren't missing me. They were missing what I used to give. The quiet compliance, the unquestioned support, the monthly check. It was never about me, not really. It was about what I did for them, who I became for them. And now that I was no longer playing that role, they didn't know how to treat me. I thought breaking away would feel clean, like a relief, but it felt more like a bruise that deepened every time I breathed. I was starting to understand that emotional manipulation doesn't stop just because you walk away. Sometimes it chases you. Owen tried to help. He cooked, he sat with me, he kept the apartment warm and quiet. He didn't try to fix it, just made space for me to feel whatever I needed to feel. That helped more than I realized at the time, but even with his support, the doubt crept in. Maybe I had overreacted. Maybe I could have handled it better. Maybe. And then I'd remember the text. The locks. The way they made me disposable was the second I stopped being useful. That truth pulled me back from the edge every time. This wasn't just about money. It was about being erased. About being rewritten in their version of the story as the villain. And no matter how much I wanted things to go back to normal, I couldn't forget how easily they cast me out. So I kept the phone off more often than not. I showed up to work even when it was hard. I saw my therapist twice a week. I let myself cry even when it made no sense. And I reminded myself over and over that survival doesn't always look strong. Sometimes it just looks like staying upright. Sometimes it's choosing silence because it's the only voice that doesn't hurt. I didn't want to go, but part of me needed to. Aunt Rachel had called a family meeting at her house saying everyone would be there, including my parents, Lily, and their lawyer. She said, "Maybe it's time to clear the air, and for reasons I still don't fully understand," I said yes. Owen came with me. We agreed I wouldn't go in alone. He held my hand all the way there, his silence steadying me more than words ever could. When we pulled into the driveway, my stomach turned. Their cars were already parked outside. I gripped the folder on my lap like it was armor. Inside, the air felt thick. My mom's eyes were red like she'd been crying. My dad stood as we walked in, tense and awkward. Lily sat, rigid arms crossed, her expression unreadable. The family lawyer, a man named Carl, who had known us since I was a teenager, nodded politely but didn't smile. I sat down slowly, Owen beside me, placing the folder on my lap. My father started first. "Claire, thank you for coming. We need to fix this before it's too late." He launched into a speech about family unity, and how misunderstandings had gotten out of hand. Then my mom chimed in. She said they never meant to hurt me, that Lily was just scared that they thought I would understand. That line, "We thought you'd understand," nearly made me laugh. Lily spoke next. Her voice was sharper. "You made this about money, about control. This is what you do when you don't get your way." I listened quietly. I didn't interrupt. I let them all take their turn painting me as the villain. When they were done, I opened the folder and pulled out copies of my bank statements and the text my mother had sent. I passed them across the coffee table. Carl read them silently, his brow furrowing. My dad glanced and looked away. My mom wouldn't meet my eyes. Then I spoke. My voice didn't shake, which surprised me. I paid over $100,000 toward a house I was later locked out of without warning. I looked at each of them. You didn't ask. You didn't apologize. You treated me like a stranger who wandered onto your property. Carl cleared his throat. Legally, Claire has no obligation to continue. These were voluntary payments. He looked uncomfortable as he said it, but his voice was firm. Lily scoffed. "So now you want the house. Is that what this is?" I shook my head. "I don't want the house," I said quietly. "I just want to never be used again." The room went still. My father opened his mouth, then closed it. My mother let out a small gasp. For once, Lily had nothing to say. I gathered my papers and stood up. "You don't have to like my decision, but you'll respect it." Owen stood with me. "I'm done playing the role you wrote for me." And with that, I turned and walked out. Not because I was angry, but because I was finally truly done. I walked toward the front door with the folder still in my hand. No one followed. No one called my name. The silence behind me was louder than anything they'd said during that meeting. Just before stepping outside, I paused. I turned back for one last moment, looking at the people who had taught me how to give everything except to myself. "You locked me out," I said, calm and steady. "I'm just walking through the door you closed." Then I left. Not out of spite, not to make a point. I left because there was finally nothing left to hold on to. Owen opened the passenger door for me without saying a word. As soon as I sat down, the tension in my body sank into the seat like a weight I didn't realize I had been carrying for years. We didn't speak for the first few minutes of the drive. The road was quiet. My head was louder. I stared out the window, replaying every word, every glance, every silence that said more than shouting ever could. Finally, Owen reached for my hand. His voice was soft, almost cautious. "Are you okay?" I didn't look at him. I didn't need to. "No," I said, my throat tight but clear. "But I will be." And for the first time in a long time, I actually believed it. Moving in with Owen felt both strange and comforting. His apartment wasn't big, but it felt like a safe haven. For the first time in months, I didn't wake up to cold air or colder silence. I started therapy with a woman named Dr. Lynn. She didn't ask me to explain everything at once. Instead, she let me unpack the damage in pieces at a pace I could handle. We talked about guilt, about how being the strong one had taught me to silence my needs, about how family love isn't real if it depends on your usefulness. Financially, things got better almost immediately. Without the mortgage payments, I could finally breathe. I opened a savings account in my own name and set a goal I'd once given up on, buying a home of my own. Owen helped me track my progress. Every time I hit a milestone, he celebrated it like it mattered. And because of that, it did. I started sleeping through the night again. The nightmares stopped. I still felt heavy some mornings, but it wasn't the same crushing weight. It was more like recovery soreness. Then 2 months after the family meeting, I got an email from my mother. It wasn't long. It wasn't defensive. Just a plain subject line that read, "I'm sorry." She wrote that she understood if I didn't want to speak to her again. She said she had spent her whole life trying to keep the peace and didn't realize she'd been keeping it at my expense. She said I didn't deserve what they did. Reading it made my chest ache in a way I hadn't expected. It wasn't a demand. It wasn't a plea. It was for once something close to the truth. I didn't respond. I didn't delete it either. I read it twice, then saved it in a folder called Maybe. Because while I hadn't forgiven her, I also hadn't stopped caring. And for the first time, it felt like maybe she was trying to see me for who I really was, not just who they needed me to be. Healing didn't happen in a straight line. Some days, I still questioned if I had overreacted. Other days, I was sure I hadn't gone far enough. But with every therapy session, every quiet night with Owen, I felt more like myself. Or maybe I was meeting myself for the first time. The version of me that didn't need to earn her place by carrying everyone else. The one who could just exist and be enough. And that felt like a beginning worth holding on to. 6 months after I canceled the mortgage payments, Owen and I closed on our first home. It wasn't huge, but it had light in all the right places and just enough space to feel like something we chose, not something we were handed. The first night we slept there, I cried, not because I was sad, but because I felt safe. At work, things started shifting too. I was offered a promotion to senior analyst, the kind of position I'd once dreamed about, but never thought I'd have the energy to pursue. This time, I said yes without hesitation. My mother and I talk occasionally now. Nothing deep, nothing forced. Sometimes, just photos of a new recipe or updates on her garden. It's careful and fragile, but it feels honest in a way it never did before. Lily and I haven't spoken. I don't think we will anytime soon, and that's okay. Some doors aren't meant to be reopened, and I've stopped feeling guilty for not knocking. What surprises me most is how peaceful everything feels. No more waiting for a message that might ruin my day. No more shrinking myself to fit into someone else's version of a daughter. Freedom, it turns out, isn't loud. It's quiet mornings with fresh coffee. It's dinner on our patio with Owen. It's laughing without checking who's watching. I used to think I needed their approval to be okay. Now I know I only needed to stop asking for what they never intended to give. I didn't lose a family. I reclaimed myself. And in this new chapter, that is more than enough. If someone locked you out of what you paid for, would you still beg to be let back in? That's the question I kept asking myself in the weeks after everything happened. And maybe now it's a question I'm asking you. Have you ever had to walk away from something that used to feel like home just to protect your own peace? Have you ever been told that setting boundaries meant you were selfish when deep down all you wanted was to feel safe and seen? Because if you have, I want you to know you're not alone. You're not dramatic. You're not cold. You're just finally putting yourself first, maybe for the first time in your life. I used to think love meant staying no matter what. Now I know real love doesn't make you choose between your heart and your sanity. So, if you've been through something similar, I'd love to hear your story. What made you walk away? What helped you heal? Drop it in the comments if you feel ready. And if you're still in that quiet, hard place where you're not sure what to do, I hope this gave you something to hold on to. You're not selfish for choosing peace. Sometimes, that's the bravest thing you can do. Thank you for listening to my story. Truly, it means more than you know.